Close your eyes and take a deep breath. Allow your body to settle, to find that perfect position of comfort as we begin our journey together into a realm of ancient magic, timeless wisdom, and extraordinary courage hidden within ordinary souls. Tonight, we wander through the mist-covered hills and enchanted forests of Middle-earth, a world born from the imagination of one remarkable mind, yet one that somehow feels as real as the bed beneath you or the air filling your lungs. I am here to guide you through the complete history of The Lord of the Rings, a tale that has captivated hearts and minds across generations. My voice will be your companion as we explore the quiet courage of hobbits, the ancient wisdom of elves, the stalwart strength of dwarves, and the complex destiny of men. Whether you're seeking peaceful slumber or simply a gentle respite from the clamor of daily life, this journey is for you. There is no need to concentrate too deeply. Allow the story to wash over you like gentle waves on a shore. If sleep comes to claim you before our tale concludes, then my purpose is fulfilled. And should you remain awake through our entire adventure, may you find yourself transported, if only for a little while, to a place where magic still lingers in the whisper of leaves and the twinkle of distant stars. So, settle in, dear listener. Let the tension melt from your shoulders. Feel the weight of the day dissolve as we step together into a world where the smallest person can change the course of the future, where ancient trees walk and speak, and where the bond between friends can overcome the darkest shadow. Our story begins not with hobbits or wizards, but with a young professor of Anglo-Saxon at Oxford University. John Ronald Reuel Tolkien, born in 1892 in South Africa, but raised in England, possessed a remarkable mind with a singular passion for languages. As a child, he invented languages for fun, creating entire linguistic systems with their own grammar, vocabulary, and evolution. This fascination would later become the seed bed from which Middle-earth would grow. Tolkien's academic career focused on ancient texts and forgotten tongues. He immersed himself in Norse mythology, Finnish epics, Celtic legends, and Anglo-Saxon poetry, like Beowulf. These ancient stories, with their dragons and heroes, their quests and magic rings, seeped into his imagination, blending with his Catholic faith and his love of nature into something entirely new. But it was the First World War that truly shaped Tolkien's vision. As a young lieutenant in the Lancashire Fusiliers, he experienced the horrors of the Battle of the Somme, where industrial warfare transformed pastoral landscapes into nightmarish wastelands of mud and death. He lost all but one of his closest school friends to the conflict, a grief that would echo through his later writings in the theme of fellowship and sacrifice. During long hospital stays recovering from trench fever, Tolkien began crafting what he called his mythology for England. He wrote of elves and men, of great battles and tragic love stories, of the creation of the world through divine music, and of jewelry that contained the very light of the stars. These early tales would eventually be collected in the Silmarillion, published posthumously through the efforts of his son Christopher. It wasn't until the 1930s, while grading examination papers, that Tolkien scribbled an unexpected sentence on a blank page. "In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit." Even he didn't know what a hobbit was or why this sentence came to him, but from this small beginning grew The Hobbit, published in 1937 to modest success. Its sequel, initially intended to be another light children's tale, evolved over more than a decade into something far grander: The Lord of the Rings. Published in 3 volumes between 1954 and 1955, The Lord of the Rings was unlike anything that had come before. Neither children's story nor conventional novel, it created an entire secondary world with its own geography, languages, peoples, and thousands of years of history. Though initially receiving mixed reviews, it gradually grew in popularity until, by the 1960s, it had become a cultural phenomenon, a beloved classic that has never since been out of print. To truly understand The Lord of the Rings, we must first grasp the vast history that precedes it. For Tolkien created not just a story, but an entire mythology, spanning thousands of years, divided into great ages each with their own defining events and heroes. In the beginning was Eru Ilúvatar, the one who first created the Ainur, godlike beings who might be likened to angels. Together, they sang the music of the Ainur, a great symphony that became the blueprint for all that would exist. From this music, the world called Arda was formed, and many of the Ainur descended into it to help shape it according to the themes they had sung. Those Ainur who entered fully into the world became known as the Valar, the powers of Arda, and their lesser kindred were the Maiar. Chief among the Valar were Manwë, Lord of Air and Birds; Varda, Lady of the Stars; Aule, Master of Craft and Earth; Yavanna, Giver of Fruits and Lover of all growing things; and Ulmo, Lord of Waters. But one among the Ainur turned to darkness, Melkor, mightiest of all, who sought to impose his own vision upon the music and later upon the world itself. As the Valar labored to build the world, Melkor worked to undo or corrupt their efforts. Where they raised mountains, he cast them down. Where they lit lamps to illuminate the world, he overthrew them. Eventually, the Valar withdrew to the westernmost region of the world, Aman, where they created the realm of Valinor. There they raised the 2 trees, Telperion the silver and Laurelin the gold, whose light illuminated their realm while the rest of the world slumbered in twilight beneath the stars. It was in this twilight age that the first children of Ilúvatar, the elves, awakened beside the waters of Cuiviénen in the east of Middle-earth. The Valar, learning of their coming, made war upon Melkor to protect them, eventually capturing him and bringing him in chains to Valinor, where he was imprisoned for 3 ages. The Valar then invited the elves to dwell with them in Valinor, and many accepted, undertaking the great journey westward. These became known as the Eldar, the Star Folk, while those who remained in Middle-earth were called the Avari, the Unwilling. Of the Eldar, 3 kindreds made the journey: the Vanyar, who would never return to Middle-earth; the Noldor, skilled in craft and lore; and the Teleri, who loved the sea and built ships. In Valinor, the elves learned much from the Valar and flourished in the light of the 2 trees. Greatest among the Noldor was Fëanor, most gifted of all the children of Ilúvatar. In a feat never to be repeated, he captured the light of the 2 trees in 3 jewels of surpassing beauty, the Silmarils, which would shine with an inner fire even after the trees themselves were destroyed. For Melkor, having served his sentence, feigned repentance and was released. He poisoned the harmony of Valinor with lies and stirred the pride of the Noldor, particularly Fëanor. Then, with the help of Ungoliant, a spirit of ravenous darkness in spider form, he destroyed the 2 trees and stole the Silmarils, fleeing back to Middle-earth, where he established his great fortress of Angband in the north. In grief and rage, Fëanor led most of the Noldor back to Middle-earth in pursuit of Melkor, now called Morgoth, the Black Enemy. Before departing, Fëanor and his 7 sons swore a terrible oath to recover the Silmarils and to wage war against anyone, even the Valar themselves, who withheld the jewels from them. This oath of Fëanor would drive much of the tragedy of the First Age. The First Age of the Sun dawned as the Noldor reached Middle-earth, and with the first rising of the sun, then the second children of Ilúvatar walk in the eastern regions. Like the elves, men were mortal, doomed to die after a short span of years, but also free from the fate of the world, able to shape their own destinies beyond the music of the riddle. The First Age was dominated by the wars of the Noldor against Morgoth, a series of tragic conflicts known collectively as the War of the Jewels. Great realms of elves and men were established. Doriath under the Sindarin king Thingol, Gondolin hidden among the mountains, Nargothrond along the river Narog, and the realms of the sons of Fëanor in the east. For a time, these kingdoms held Morgoth at bay, but one by one they fell through treachery, the dragon Glaurung, or the fulfillment of the terrible oath. Among the great tales of this age was that of Beren and Luthien, a mortal man and an elven princess who, against all odds, succeeded in recovering one of the Silmarils from Morgoth's iron crown. Their descendants, through the line of Elrond half-elven and his brother Elros, would play crucial roles in later ages. There was also the tragic story of Turin Turambar, whose life was blighted by Morgoth's curse upon his family, and the fall of the hidden city of Gondolin, betrayed to the enemy. The First Age ended with the War of Wrath, when the Valar finally answered the plea of Arundel Mariner, who had sailed to Valinor, wearing the Silmaril of Beren and Luthien on his brow. The host of the Valar came to Middle-earth and overthrew Morgoth in a cataclysmic battle that broke the land and sank much of the western regions beneath the sea. Morgoth was cast out through the door of night into the void beyond the world, though his lieutenant Sauron escaped and would return to trouble later ages. The 2 remaining Silmarils were recovered from Morgoth's crown, but the Oath of Fëanor drove his last surviving sons to steal them. Because of their many evil deeds in pursuit of the jewels, the Silmarils burned their hands, rejecting them as unworthy. In despair, one cast himself and his jewel into a fiery chasm, while the other threw his into the sea. Arundel, meanwhile, sailed the heavens with the 3rd Silmaril bound to his brow, becoming the brightest star in the sky, a sign of hope in dark times. The Second Age dawned with many changes. Most of the surviving elves departed for Valinor, though some remained in Middle-earth, led by Gil-galad, High King of the Noldor, and Círdan, the shipwright. The remaining Edain, the houses of men who had been allies of the elves, were rewarded with a new homeland, a star-shaped island raised from the sea, midway between Middle-earth and Valinor. This was Númenor, the land of gift, and its first king was Elros, son of Arundel, who, unlike his brother Elrond, chose the path of mortality. The Númenorians were blessed with lifespans several times that of ordinary men and great strength of body and mind. They became master mariners, their ships venturing far across the seas of Middle-earth, bringing knowledge and skills to lesser men. Yet they were forbidden by the Valar from sailing so far west that Valinor would come into sight, a restriction that would eventually breed resentment. In Middle-earth, Sauron, once Morgoth's greatest servant, began to stir again. Around the year 1000 of the Second Age, he started building his power in the land that would later be called Mordor. Around 1500, disguised as Annatar, Lord of Gifts, he approached the elven smiths of Eregion, led by Celebrimbor, grandson of Feanor. Claiming to be an emissary of the Valar, he taught them ring lore, guiding them in the creation of the Rings of Power, 16 in all, 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone, 9 for mortal men doomed to die. Unbeknownst to the elves, Sauron created another ring, the One Ring, forged in the fires of Mount Doom, into which he poured much of his native power and malice. With this master ring, he intended to control all who wore the lesser rings, but the elves sensed his purpose as soon as he put on the one and removed their own rings. Sauron waged war against them, destroying Eregion and killing Celebrimbor, but the 3 elven rings were hidden from him. Eventually, Sauron captured the 7 and the 9, distributing them to dwarves and men. The 7 did not work as he intended on the dwarves, making them greedy but not enslaving them to his will. The 9, however, worked all too well on men. The kings who received them gained great power and seemingly endless life, but over centuries faded into wraiths, becoming the Nazgul, the ring wraiths, Sauron's most terrible servants. As Sauron's power grew in Middle-earth, the Númenóreans changed as well. Their early friendship with the elves cooled, and they began to resent their mortality, viewing it as a punishment rather than Ilúvatar's gift. They established dominions along the coasts of Middle-earth, coming as conquerors demanding tribute rather than as helpers. In the year 3262 of the Second Age, our Pharazôn, proudest and mightiest of all the kings of Númenor, sailed to Middle-earth to challenge Sauron's claim to be king of men. Such was the might of Númenor that Sauron's servants fled, and he humbled himself before our Pharazôn, becoming his prisoner, but also his advisor. This was merely a new strategy. Unable to defeat the Númenóreans by force, Sauron corrupted them from within. Under Sauron's influence, most Númenóreans abandoned the worship of Ilúvatar and built a temple to Morgoth, offering human sacrifices in hope of escaping death. The faithful Númenóreans, led by Elendil and his sons Isildur and Anarion, were persecuted. In the year 3319, our Pharazôn, nearing the end of his life and desperate for immortality, built a great fleet to invade Valinor itself and wrest the secret of eternal life from the Valar by force. When this armada reached the shores of Valinor, Ilúvatar intervened directly. The world was changed. A great chasm opened in the sea, swallowing the fleet of our Pharazôn, and the island of Númenor itself was drawn down into the abyss. Only Elendil and the faithful, who had prepared their own ships, survived. Driven by great winds to the shores of Middle-earth, they established the realms of Arnor in the north and Gondor in the south, preserving what they could of Númenórean culture and knowledge. Sauron's body was destroyed in Númenor's downfall, but his spirit returned to Mordor, where he took shape again, though he could no longer appear fair and had to rule by fear. The final years of the Second Age saw him wage war against the kingdoms of Elendil. He captured Minas Ithil, which became Minas Morgul, the Tower of Sorcery, and burned the white tree that Isildur had brought from Númenor as a seedling. In response, Gil-galad and Elendil formed the last alliance of elves and men and marched on Mordor. After a 7-year siege of Barad-dûr, Sauron himself came forth. On the slopes of Mount Doom, Gil-galad and Elendil fought him and perished. But Isildur took up his father's broken sword, Narsil, and cut the One Ring from Sauron's hand. With his power divorced from the ring, Sauron's spirit fled, and his body was destroyed once more. Rather than destroy the ring, however, Isildur claimed it for himself as Weirgild for his father and brother. This decision would cast a shadow over the entire Third Age, for as long as the ring existed, Sauron's spirit could endure and eventually return. The Third Age began in the shadow of both victory and loss. As Isildur journeyed north to take up his rule in Arnor, he was ambushed by orcs near the Gladden Fields. Overwhelmed, he attempted to escape by putting on the ring and using its power of invisibility. But as he swam across the Anduin, the ring slipped from his finger, betraying him, and he was slain by orc archers. The ring sank into the mud of the riverbed, where it would remain hidden for nearly 2,500 years. For much of the Third Age, the kingdoms established by Elendil and his sons slowly declined. Arnor in the north eventually split into 3 lesser kingdoms, Arthedain, Cardolan, and Rhudaur, which were weakened by infighting and the machinations of the Witch King of Angmar, chief of the Nazgul. By the year 1974, the last northern kingdom had fallen, and the surviving Dunedain became the Rangers, a wandering people protecting the ordinary folk of places like Bree and the Shire, though their service was largely unrecognized. Gondor, meanwhile, experienced a period of expansion and glory under a series of strong kings. But it too gradually declined, beset by enemies on several fronts. The Corsairs of Umbar to the south, the Easterlings beyond Mordor, and the Wainriders from the east. A series of misfortunes befell it. The Great Plague of 1636 decimated its population. Civil war arose during the Kinstrife, and in 2050, the last king of Gondor, Eärnur, rode to answer a challenge from the Witch King of Angmar and was never seen again. With no clear heir, rule passed to the stewards, who governed Gondor in the king's name. During this time, other peoples of Middle-earth pursued their own destinies. The dwarves of Khazad-dûm, or Moria, continued to delve deep beneath the Misty Mountains until, in 1980, they awakened a Balrog, a demon of fire and shadow. Durin the Sixth was slain, and the dwarves abandoned their greatest mansion. Some established new homes in the Iron Hills, and later the lonely mountain Erebor, but their people declined in numbers and power. It was also during the Third Age that a most unlikely people rose to significance, the Hobbits. These small home-loving folk had dwelt in the upper vales of the Anduin River, but around the year 1050 began migrating westward, eventually settling in the land that would become known as the Shire in the year 1601. The Hobbits lived quiet lives, largely untouched by the great events of Middle-earth, content with the simple pleasures of home, garden, and good food. Around the year 1000 of the Third Age, 5 Istari, or wizards, arrived in Middle-earth. Saruman the White, Gandalf the Grey, Radagast the Brown, and 2 blue wizards who went into the east and fade from the tales of the west. These were Maiar spirits, of the same order as Sauron, sent in the guise of old men to help the free peoples resist the growing shadow. Forbidden from matching power with power or ruling through force, they were to advise, encourage, and unite rather than dominate. Meanwhile, a dark presence established itself at Dol Guldur in the southern reaches of Greenwood the Great, which gradually became known as Mirkwood as darkness spread beneath its eaves. This presence initially called the Necromancer, was in fact Sauron, slowly regaining his strength. Yet without the One Ring, he could not fully restore his power. The ring itself had an extraordinary journey during the Third Age. After lying in the Anduin for nearly 2,500 years, it was found by two friends, Déagol and Sméagol, small hobbit-like riverfolk who were fishing in the Gladden fields. Sméagol, immediately corrupted by the ring's influence, murdered his friend to possess it and was gradually transformed by its power into the creature known as Gollum. For nearly 500 years, he lived in darkness beneath the misty mountains, sustained beyond his natural span by the ring's power. In the year 2941 of the Third Age, the ring abandoned Gollum, perhaps sensing that its master was stirring once more in the world. It was found by a hobbit, Bilbo Baggins, who was passing through the mountain tunnels on a quest with Thorin Oakenshield and his company of dwarves to reclaim Erebor from the dragon Smaug. This adventure, recounted in The Hobbit, ended with Smaug's death at the hands of Bard, the bowman of Lake Town, and the Battle of Five Armies, where many fell, including Thorin and his sister sons, Fili and Kili. Although unknown to those involved, this quest served a greater purpose in the designs of the Valar. With Smaug dead and the kingdom under the mountain restored, a strong northern bastion was created against the gathering darkness. Moreover, it was on this journey that the ring passed from Gollum to Bilbo, setting in motion events that would culminate in the War of the Ring. For 60 years, Bilbo possessed the ring, using it occasionally for trivial purposes, avoiding unwanted visitors or simply disappearing for amusement. Yet even he was not immune to its influence. He became unusually well preserved, showing no signs of aging, and he developed an uncharacteristic attachment to it. When Gandalf finally convinced him to leave it to his nephew and heir, Frodo Baggins, the moment of surrender required immense willpower. In the year 3018 of the Third Age, nearly 60 years after Bilbo's adventure, Gandalf confirmed that Bilbo's magic ring was indeed the One Ring of Sauron. With this discovery, he set in motion a plan for its destruction, the only way to ensure Sauron's final defeat. And so began the events recounted in The Lord of the Rings, the tale to which we now turn our full attention. Our tale truly begins in the Shire, that green and pleasant land of gentle hills, meandering streams, and cozy hobbit holes with their round doors and well-tended gardens. Here, far from the great concerns of the wider world, lives Frodo Baggins, adopted heir of his eccentric cousin Bilbo, who vanished on his 111th birthday, leaving Frodo his home at Bag End and a certain golden ring. For 17 years, Frodo lives a quiet life, the ring all but forgotten in his pocket. But in the wider world, shadows are growing. Gandalf, suspecting the true nature of Bilbo's ring, confirms his fears through long research and a visit to Minas Tirith, where ancient scrolls speak of the One Ring and its making. Upon his return to the Shire, he tests the ring in fire, revealing the flowing script of the black speech of Mordor. One ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. With this revelation comes grave news. The 9 ring wraiths have crossed the river Anduin, disguised as black riders, seeking Baggins and the Shire. Sauron believes the ring is in the possession of some unknown hobbit, and his servants are coming to claim it. Gandalf urges Frodo to leave the Shire immediately, to travel to Rivendell, where the wise might determine what to do with the ring. he promises to meet Frodo at the inn of the Prancing Pony in the village of Bree. And so, on a September evening, Frodo leaves his beloved Bag End. With him are his loyal gardener, Samwise Gamgee, and his cousins, Meriadoc, Merry Brandybuck, and Peregrine Pippin Took, who refuse to let him face danger alone. Their journey takes them through the heart of the Shire, across the Brandywine River, and into the mysterious Old Forest, where ancient trees harbor memories and resentments from ages past. In the Old Forest, they encounter Old Man Willow, a malevolent tree spirit who entraps them, and are saved by Tom Bombadil, an enigmatic figure who seems untouched by the ring's power. In his house, they meet his wife Goldberry, daughter of the river, and enjoy a brief respite from their troubles. Tom, ancient and merry, represents a power outside the grand conflicts of Middle-earth, one who remembers the first raindrop and the first acorn. Leaving Tom's protection, the hobbits cross the Barrow Downs, where they are captured by a Barrow-wight, an undead spirit of ancient wars. Again, Tom rescues them, and they finally reach Bree, a town where big folk, humans, and little folk, hobbits, live side by side. At the Prancing Pony, they discover that Gandalf has not arrived as promised. Instead, they meet a weather-beaten ranger called Strider, who offers to guide them to Rivendell. Though initially suspicious, Frodo accepts Strider's help when a letter from Gandalf identifies him as Aragorn, a friend who can be trusted. This proves fortunate, for that very night, the Ringwraiths attack the inn, only to find the hobbits' beds stuffed with pillows. Under Aragorn's guidance, the hobbits trek through the wilderness toward Rivendell, pursued by the Black Riders. At Weathertop, an ancient watchtower, they are attacked. The Witch King, leader of the Ringwraiths, stabs Frodo with a Morgul blade, a wicked knife whose splinter works its way toward the heart, threatening to turn its victim into a wraith. Though Aragorn drives off the attackers with fire, Frodo's wound is beyond his skill to heal. The party presses on desperately toward Rivendell, Frodo's strength fading with each day. Just when it seems they will be overtaken, the elf lord Glorfindel appears and places Frodo on his white horse, Asphalloth. At the ford of Bruinen, the Ringwraiths nearly capture him, but the river, commanded by Elrond's power, rises in flood and sweeps them away. Frodo loses consciousness as he crosses into the protected realm of Rivendell. He awakens, healed, in the house of Elrond, to find Gandalf at his bedside. The wizard explains his absence. He had been imprisoned by Saruman, once the head of his order, but now a traitor allied with Sauron. Only the timely intervention of Gwaihir, the Wind Lord, Lord of the Great Eagles, had allowed Gandalf to escape. A great council is called, with representatives of the free peoples of Middle-earth, elves, dwarves, and men. Here, the full history of the ring is recounted, and they debate what should be done with it. Some suggest hiding it, others sending it across the sea to Valinor, still others using it against Sauron. Gandalf and Elrond reject these options. The ring cannot be hidden from Sauron's gaze. The road to Valinor is closed, and none could wield the ring without becoming a new Dark Lord. Only one option remains. The ring must be destroyed by casting it back into the fires of Mount Doom in Mordor, where it was forged. When debate arises over who should carry it, Frodo, to his own surprise, volunteers, "I will take the ring, though I do not know the way." To aid him in this quest, the council appoints 8 companions: Gandalf, whose wisdom will guide them; Aragorn, heir of Isildur; Boromir, son of the Steward of Gondor; Legolas, an elf of the woodland realm, Gimli, son of Glóin, representing the dwarves, and Frodo's 3 hobbit friends, Sam, Merry, and Pippin. Together, they form the Fellowship of the Ring. For 2 months, the company rests in Rivendell while scouts search for signs of the ring wraiths. During this time, the broken sword of Elendil, Narsil, is reforged for Aragorn and renamed Andúril, Flame of the West. Finally, on December 25th, the Fellowship sets out on their perilous journey. Their path takes them south along the eastern slopes of the Misty Mountains. After a failed attempt to cross the mountains via the Redhorn Gate, where they are turned back by unnaturally heavy snow, they are forced to take the dark path through Moria, the ancient dwarf kingdom now overrun by orcs. It is a journey of several days through pitch-black tunnels and cavernous halls, with danger lurking in the shadows. In the chamber of Mazarbul, they find the tomb of Balin, Gimli's kinsman, who had attempted to reclaim Moria 30 years earlier. A book found beside the tomb reveals the colony's grim fate. "We cannot get out. They are coming." No sooner have they read these words than they are attacked by orcs and a cave troll, narrowly escaping after a fierce battle. As they near the eastern exit of Moria, a far worse enemy appears. Durin's Bane, the Balrog, a demon of shadow and flame from the First Age. On the narrow bridge of Khazad Dûm, Gandalf confronts this ancient evil. "You cannot pass," he declares, breaking the bridge with his staff. But as the Balrog falls, its whip of fire lashes out, dragging Gandalf into the abyss. His last words to the Fellowship are, "Fly, you fools!" Grief-stricken, the remaining companions flee Moria and enter the woods of Lothlórien, realm of Galadriel and Celeborn, ancient elves of surpassing wisdom and power. Here, time seems to flow differently, and the hurts of body and spirit find healing. Galadriel tests each member of the Fellowship, looking into their hearts and offering a glimpse of possible futures in her mirror, a basin of water that shows things that were, are, and may yet be. Before they depart, Galadriel gives each member of the Fellowship a gift. To Frodo, she gives a phial containing the light of Arendil's star, captured in the waters of her fountain. "May it be a light to you in dark places," she tells him, "when all other lights go out." She also presents the Fellowship with elven cloaks and special food, Limba's bread, for their journey. Leaving Lothlórien, the company travels south by boat along the great river Anduin. Aragorn intends to lead them to Minas Tirith in Gondor, but Frodo grows increasingly aware that he must leave the Fellowship and go into Mordor alone. The ring's influence is growing stronger, and he fears its effect on his companions, particularly Boromir, whose growing desire for the ring becomes evident in his gaze. At Parth Galen, near the Falls of Rhoros, Frodo wanders off to consider his path. Boromir follows and tries to persuade him to bring the ring to Gondor as a weapon against Sauron. When Frodo refuses, Boromir attempts to take the ring by force, driven temporarily mad by its influence. Frodo puts on the ring and escapes, coming to the painful decision that he must leave the Fellowship behind to protect them from the ring and themselves. Sam, realizing Frodo's intention, refuses to be left behind. "I made a promise, Mr. Frodo," he says. "A promise, don't you leave him, Samwise Gamgee." "And I don't mean to." And so the two hobbits set off alone toward Mordor, while the rest of the Fellowship splinters in chaos. Boromir is slain defending Merry and Pippin from orcs, who carry the young hobbits away toward Isengard. Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli set off in pursuit, leaving the ring on its own path to Mordor, carried by the most humble members of the Fellowship. The story now divides, following three separate paths: Frodo and Sam on their lonely quest toward Mordor, Merry and Pippin as captives of the Uruk-hai, and Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli in pursuit. Let us first follow the hunters. For 3 days and nights, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli pursue the orcs across the plains of Rohan, the kingdom of the Horse Lords. Their chase is a testament to the endurance of three exceptional warriors: Aragorn's woodcraft, Legolas's elven stamina, and Gimli's dwarven tenacity driving them forward despite exhaustion. On the fourth day, they encounter a company of Rohirrim, the Horse Lords of Rohan, led by Éomer, nephew of King Theoden. Éomer informs them that his riders slaughtered the orcs the previous night, but saw no hobbits. He lends them horses and suggests they seek answers in the nearby Fangorn forest, a place the Rohirrim avoid out of ancient fear and respect. Within this ancient wood, instead of finding Merry and Pippin, they encounter a figure of power, Gandalf, returned from death as Gandalf the White, with greater power and purpose for the final conflict with Sauron. Gandalf explains that Merry and Pippin are safe with Treebeard, oldest of the Ents, the shepherds of the forest, giant tree-like beings as old as the world itself. More urgently, he tells them of the corruption of King Theoden of Rohan by his counselor Grima Wormtongue, a spy of Saruman. Together, they ride to Edoras, the capital of Rohan, where Gandalf breaks Wormtongue's hold over the king, restoring him to strength and clarity of mind. Theoden, learning of Saruman's betrayal and the threat his armies pose to Rohan, decides to lead his people to the ancient fortress of Helm's Deep. En route, they are attacked by warg riders, and Aragorn falls from a cliff during the battle, presumed dead by his companions. He survives, however, and rejoins them at Helm's Deep, bringing dire news. Saruman has dispatched an army of 10,000 Uruk-hai to destroy them. The Battle of Helm's Deep is a desperate struggle against overwhelming odds. The defenders, men of Rohan along with Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, and a contingent of elves sent by Elrond, fight with courage but are driven back step by step as the Uruk-hai breach the outer defenses. At dawn, when all seems lost, Gandalf appears with reinforcements led by Éomer, turning the tide. Even more surprisingly, the very forest moves against the retreating Uruk-hai. The Huorns, wild tree shepherds from Fangorn, have come to war. Meanwhile, Merry and Pippin have their own adventure. Escaping during the Rohirrim's attack on the orcs, they flee into Fangorn Forest, where they meet Treebeard, an Ent who initially mistakes them for small orcs. Upon learning their true nature, he summons an Ent-Moot, a gathering of Ents to decide whether to go to war against Saruman, who has been cutting down trees to fuel the fires of Isengard. The decision is slow in coming, for Ents do not like being roused. But when the Ents see the devastation Saruman has wrought on the forest edges, their wrath is terrible. They march on Isengard, tearing down its walls, flooding its pits, and trapping Saruman in his Tower of Orthanc. When Gandalf, Theoden, and the others arrive after the Battle of Helm's Deep, they find Merry and Pippin sitting amidst the ruins, enjoying recovered provisions. Let us now turn to Frodo and Sam, whose path takes them into increasingly dark and dangerous lands. After leaving the Fellowship, they struggle to find a way through the maze of sharp rocks and cliffs of the Emyn Muil. Soon they realize they are being followed by Gollum, the ring's former bearer, who has been trailing the Fellowship since Moria. They capture him, and Frodo, feeling a kinship with this creature so deformed by the ring's influence, makes Gollum swear an oath to guide them to Mordor. Gollum knows secret paths, having spent years searching for his precious. Within him, a conflict rages between the remnants of his original self, Smeagol, who wishes to serve the nice master, and the Gollum personality, consumed by desire for the ring. Their journey takes them through the Dead Marshes, a haunted swampland where the bodies of elves, men, and orcs, slain in an ancient battle, lie preserved in shallow pools, ghostly lights hovering over them. Beyond the marshes, they approach the Black Gate of Mordor, only to find it impenetrable, guarded by countless orcs. Gollum suggests another way in, a secret stair near Minas Morgul, the Tower of Sorcery, that will lead them into Mordor from an unexpected direction. As they travel south along the edge of the Mountains of Shadow, they are captured by a company of rangers of Ithilien led by Faramir, brother of Boromir. Learning that Frodo bears the One Ring, Faramir is briefly tempted to take it to Gondor, as his brother had wished. But unlike Boromir, Faramir resists the temptation, understanding the ring's corrupting nature. "Not if I found it on the highway would I take it," he declares, showing wisdom greater than his brothers. Faramir allows them to continue their quest, but warns them against the path Gollum is taking them through Cirith Ungol, a name that means spider's cleft. Gollum, however, has already betrayed them in his heart. The Gollum side has won the internal struggle, and he plans to lead them to her, Shelob, an ancient offspring of Ungoliant, a monstrous spider who will kill them and leave the ring for Gollum to reclaim. As the second part of our tale ends, all three groups are poised at critical junctures. Gandalf and his companions, having dealt with Saruman, prepare to return to Edoras, where crucial decisions must be made about the coming war. Frodo and Sam follow Gollum toward the dreaded pass of Cirith Ungol, the ring growing ever heavier around Frodo's neck. And the shadow of Mordor lengthens as Sauron marshals his forces for the final assault on the kingdoms of men. The final movement of our great tale begins with war looming over Middle-earth. Gandalf, having extracted crucial information from Saruman and Pippin's encounter with a Palantir, a seeing stone, rides with Pippin to Minas Tirith, the White City of Gondor. There, they find the ruling steward, Denethor, already grieving for Boromir and deeply suspicious of Aragorn's claim to the throne. When a great darkness issues from Mordor, a strategy by Sauron to terrify his enemies, Gandalf steadies the hearts of the defenders, moving among them like a star in the night, offering courage where fear threatens to overwhelm. Meanwhile, Theoden musters the riders of Rohan in response to Gondor's call for aid, with Merry sworn to his service despite the king's reluctance to endanger one so small. Aragorn, guided by Elrond's advice and accompanied by Legolas, Gimli, and the Rangers of the North, takes the paths of the dead, a haunted road beneath the mountains where the spirits of Oathbreakers dwell. These spirits had sworn allegiance to Isildur, but failed him in his hour of need. Aragorn, as Isildur's heir, offers them redemption by fulfilling their oath in battle against Sauron. As these forces move toward the coming conflict, Frodo, Sam, and Gollum reach the crossroads where an ancient fallen statue of a king has been defaced by orcs, but crowned anew with flowers, a small sign of hope. They pass by Minas Morgul just as its gates open, and a vast army marches forth, led by the Witch King of Angmar. Among the host rides a small figure unfamiliar to Frodo and Sam, but known to us, Theoden's niece Éowyn, disguised as a rider named Durnhelm, with Merry hidden under her cloak, both seeking glory and purpose in battle, despite being ordered to remain behind. Climbing the steep, endless stair of Cirith Ungol, tension grows between Sam and Gollum, the latter increasingly resentful of Sam's protective attitude toward Frodo. Near the top, they find a tunnel, which Gollum urges them to enter. It is here that he plans their doom, for this is Shelob's lair, home to an ancient evil that Sauron himself permits to thrive, because she occasionally provides him with food. Prisoners who wander into her web-choked tunnels. In the utter darkness, Frodo draws Sting, his elven blade, which glows with a pale light in the presence of orcs or creatures of Mordor. Using the Phial of Galadriel, whose light strengthens when Frodo speaks the Quenya words, Aya Arundel Elenian Onkalima, Hail Arundel, brightest of stars. They navigate the tunnels, yet Gollum disappears, and Shelob attacks. She is enormous, bloated from centuries of feeding, her eyes a malevolent cluster atop her armored form. Sam, temporarily separated from Frodo, returns just as Shelob stings his master. In one of the tale's most moving displays of courage, the humble gardener takes up Sting and the Phial and confronts this ancient horror. Against all odds, he wounds her, driving her back to her lair, but Frodo lies still, apparently dead from her poison. Orcs approaching, Sam makes the heart-wrenching decision to take the ring and continue the quest alone, only to learn from the orcs who find Frodo's body that his master is not dead, but paralyzed, now a prisoner in the Tower of Cirith Ungol. As these personal struggles unfold, great armies clash in the fields before Minas Tirith. The Witch King leads Sauron's forces, which include not only orcs, but men from the south and east. Haradrim, with their Mumakil enormous elephant-like beasts, and Easterlings in scarlet armor. For a time, the defenders of the White City seem doomed. The Great Gate is broken by Grond, the Witch King's battering ram, and he enters the city, his very presence causing men to flee in terror. It is Gandalf alone who stands against him, a moment of confrontation between two Mire spirits, one corrupted, one true to his purpose. But before their contest can be decided, horns sound on the field. The Rohirrim have arrived, their charge breaking the momentum of Sauron's assault. In the ensuing battle, Theoden is crushed beneath his fallen horse, attacked by the Witch King on his winged steed. Éowyn, still disguised, stands in defense of her uncle, joined by Merry. Together, they fulfill the ancient prophecy that not by the hand of man would the Witch King fall, for Éowyn is a woman and Merry a hobbit. The battle seems won, but a new threat appears. A fleet of black ships sailing up the Anduin. To the defenders' joy, these ships bear not enemies, but Aragorn, with Legolas, Gimli, and the army of the dead. Their arrival turns the tide decisively, and the battle of the Pelennor fields ends in victory for the free peoples of Middle-earth, though at great cost. Theoden is dead, Éowyn and Merry lie gravely wounded, and many brave soldiers of Gondor and Rohan have fallen. In the aftermath, Aragorn, not yet claiming the throne, enters the city anonymously and uses his ancient knowledge of healing herbs to save many, including Éowyn, Merry, and Faramir, who was nearly burned alive by his father Denethor in a fit of despair. This act of healing, foretold long ago, helps establish his legitimacy as the rightful king. Though victorious, the leaders of the West know that Sauron's main forces remain intact. Gandalf proposes a final desperate strategy to march on the Black Gate of Mordor, drawing out Sauron's armies and focusing his attention away from his own lands, where Frodo may still be struggling toward Mount Doom. It is a near hopeless gamble, but they see no alternative. Meanwhile, Sam, wearing the ring briefly to evade the orcs, enters the Tower of Cirith Ungol to rescue Frodo. He finds most of the orcs dead, having fought among themselves over Frodo's mithril shirt, a priceless treasure. Reunited, the two hobbits disguise themselves in orc armor and begin the final leg of their journey across the plain of Gorgoroth toward Mount Doom, their water nearly gone, the ring an almost unbearable burden to Frodo. The land of Mordor is a nightmare of ash, dust, and jagged rock, the air itself poisonous with the fumes of Mount Doom. Frodo's strength wanes further with each step, until finally he can no longer walk. In one of the story's most powerful moments, Sam, despite his own exhaustion, lifts Frodo onto his back. "Come, Mr. Frodo, I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you." As they near their goal, Gollum reappears, attacking them in a last desperate attempt to seize the ring. Sam fends him off, and they reach the cracks of Doom, the volcanic fissure within Mount Doom, where the ring was forged. But at the crucial moment, Frodo's resolve fails. The ring's power over him is complete, and he claims it for himself, putting it on his finger. At this moment of apparent disaster, Gollum attacks again. Struggling with the invisible Frodo, he bites off Frodo's ring finger, seizing the ring with mad triumph. But in his ecstatic dance, he steps too close to the edge and falls into the fires below, taking the ring with him. There is a great tremor as the ring dissolves, and the foundations of Barad-dûr, Sauron's fortress, collapse. The Dark Lord's power, bound to the ring, is broken forever, and his spirit is scattered, a mere shadow of malice, never again to take form in the world. At the Black Gate, the armies of the West witness Sauron's fall, a great shadow rising in the shape of a man, stretching out its hand toward them in defiance or perhaps despair, before being blown away by a strong wind from the west. The enslaved soldiers of Mordor lose heart and flee or surrender, their will to fight evaporating with their master's power. Frodo and Sam, stranded on a rock amidst flowing lava, prepare for death. Their quest is accomplished, the world saved, but their own lives seem forfeit. In this quiet moment, they speak of the Shire and simple memories, finding peace in the knowledge of what they've achieved. But this is not their end. Guided by Gandalf, the great eagles come to their rescue, bearing them away from the destruction of Mordor to safety and the care of their friends. When Frodo awakens in Ithilien, he finds a world transformed. Aragorn has been crowned King Elessar of the reunited kingdom of Gondor and Arnor, with Arwen, daughter of Elrond, as his queen. The fourth age of Middle-earth has begun, the age of men, as the elves prepare to depart for Valinor and the last vestiges of the Elder Days fade. The hobbits return to the Shire, only to find it not as they left it. During their absence, ruffians led by Saruman, now called Sharky, have taken control, cutting down trees, imposing harsh rules, and generally despoiling the gentle landscape. The four returning hobbits, changed by their experiences, lead the Shire folk in overthrowing these invaders in what becomes known as the Scouring of the Shire. Saruman attempts to stab Frodo but is stopped by his mithril shirt. Wormtongue, goaded beyond endurance by his master's cruelty, cuts Saruman's throat and is himself killed by hobbit archers. In the years that follow, the Shire blooms again under Sam's care. He marries Rose Cotton, his longtime love, and uses soil from Lothlorien, a gift from Galadriel, to restore trees and gardens to even greater beauty than before. Merry and Pippin, now the tallest hobbits ever known, due to the Ent draughts they drank in Fangorn, become important figures in the Shire. Frodo, however, never fully recovers from the wounds of his quest. The Morgul knife, Shelob's sting, and most of all, the burden of the ring. 2 years after the fall of Sauron, Frodo, along with Bilbo, Gandalf, Elrond, Galadriel, and many elves, departs from the Grey Havens for Valinor, the undying lands across the sea. Sam, though heartbroken to see his master go, returns to his family and his role as mayor of the Shire. The last words of the Lord of the Rings are his. "Well, I'm back," he said. Thus ends the tale of the War of the Ring and the conclusion of the Third Age of Middle-earth. The ring is destroyed, Sauron defeated forever, and the king has returned. The elves gradually depart for Valinor, their power and influence fading as the dominion of men begins in earnest. Magic slowly withdraws from the world, leaving it to be shaped by mortal hands, for good or ill. Beyond the epic narrative and richly detailed world of Middle-earth lies a tapestry of deeper themes and meanings that give the Lord of the Rings its enduring resonance. Tolkien himself disliked allegory, preferring what he called applicability, the freedom of the reader to find meaning relevant to their own life and times. Let us explore some of the profound philosophical threads woven throughout his masterwork. At the center of the story stands the theme of power and its corrupting influence. The One Ring embodies this theme perfectly, an object that offers power according to the stature of its bearer, but inevitably corrupts whoever uses it. The ring works on each character differently, tailoring its temptation to their deepest desires. For Boromir, it's the power to defend his people. For Galadriel, the ability to preserve the beauty of her realm against time's decay. For Sam, briefly, the vision of turning Mordor into a great garden. What makes this portrayal so compelling is its psychological realism. Tolkien understood that corruption rarely begins with a desire to do evil. Rather, it starts with good intentions combined with the belief that the ends justify the means. The road to darkness is paved with the conviction of one's own rightness and the necessity of imposing that rightness on others. Even Sauron, we're told, did not begin as wholly evil, but believed in the need for order and efficiency, qualities that hardened into tyranny and domination over time. This theme speaks powerfully to modern readers living in an age of unprecedented technological and political power. Tolkien, who witnessed the industrial slaughter of World War I and the rise of totalitarianism in the 20th century, offers a profound caution. Power, even when wielded with the best intentions, carries the risk of corruption. The wise in his tale, Gandalf, Galadriel, Elrond, understand this and refuse the ring despite the good they might initially achieve with it. There is wisdom in this voluntary limitation of power, this recognition of one's own fallibility. Complementing this caution about power is Tolkien's celebration of the small and humble. It is no accident that the ring-bearer is a hobbit, a member of a race known not for great deeds or ambitions, but for their love of food, drink, and the simple pleasures of home. Hobbits represent the ordinary goodness that the great struggles against evil are ultimately fighting to preserve. The everyday joys and small kindnesses that make life worth living. Finally, there is the theme of providence or fate working through individual choice. Throughout The Lord of the Rings, we see moments where seemingly chance occurrences, Bilbo finding the ring, Gollum's survival, to play his role at Mount Doom, the wind changing to bring the eagles, contribute to the ultimate triumph of good. Gandalf expresses this philosophy when he tells Frodo, behind that, there was something else at work, beyond any design of the ringmaker. Bilbo was meant to find the ring and not by its maker, in which case you also were meant to have it. Yet this providential pattern never negates the moral responsibility of the characters. Bilbo's decision to spare Gollum, Frodo's acceptance of the burden of the ring, Aragorn's choice to take the paths of the dead. These free decisions are essential links in the chain of events leading to Sauron's downfall. The pattern works through individual decisions rather than overriding them. These interwoven themes give The Lord of the Rings its remarkable depth and continuing relevance. Far from being mere escapism, it engages with fundamental human questions about power, courage, friendship, time, nature, and purpose. It offers not simplistic answers, but a rich meditation on how we might face our own challenges with grace, wisdom, and hope. As you reflect on these themes, allow them to resonate with your own experience, finding the points of connection between Tolkien's imagined world and the real one in which we live. Few works of literature have left as profound an imprint on global culture as The Lord of the Rings. From literature to film, from music to gaming, from environmental activism to internet memes, its influence permeates our collective imagination. Let us explore how Tolkien's creation has shaped the world beyond its pages, becoming a shared reference point across generations and cultures. The most immediate and obvious impact can be seen in the transformation of fantasy literature that followed the book's rise to popularity in the 1960s. Before Tolkien, modern fantasy largely consisted of either children's fairy tales or one-off adult works that did not establish cohesive secondary worlds. After Tolkien, fantasy emerged as a major publishing category with distinctive conventions, many directly inspired by his approach. The carefully constructed secondary world, with its own consistent internal history, languages, maps, and cultures, became a standard approach for fantasy writers. Authors like Terry Brooks, Robert Jordan, and countless others adopted variations of the Tolkienian model, creating detailed worlds that readers could immerse themselves in across multiple volumes. Similarly, his treatment of non-human races like elves, dwarves, and orcs established templates that would be adapted by generations of fantasy authors. Beyond these surface features, Tolkien's deeper contributions to literature may be found in his rehabilitation of certain narrative approaches that modernist literary fashion had dismissed. His use of elevated language, his willingness to depict unambiguous goodness alongside complex moral struggles, his integration of the numinous and marvelous within a generally realistic framework, and his affirmation that happy endings can be earned rather than merely naive. All these represented a countercurrent to prevailing literary trends of his time. While Tolkien's written works alone would have secured his cultural legacy, their adaptation into other media has exponentially increased their reach and influence. Most notably, Peter Jackson's film trilogy, released between 2001 and 2003, brought Middle-earth to life for millions who had never read the books. Shot in New Zealand's dramatic landscapes and utilizing a combination of practical effects, innovative digital technologies, and thoughtful design work, the films achieved unprecedented critical and commercial success for a fantasy project. The trilogy won 17 Academy Awards, including Best Picture for The Return of the King, legitimizing fantasy as a genre capable of the highest artistic achievements in cinema. Performances by actors like Ian McKellen, Gandalf, Viggo Mortensen, Aragorn, and Sean Astin, Sam, gave emotional depth to characters that might otherwise have remained archetypes, while Howard Shore's musical score provided a richly leitmotif-driven accompaniment that enhanced the film's mythic resonance. Perhaps no arena of popular culture has been more profoundly influenced by Tolkien's work than gaming. Dungeons & Dragons, the first commercially successful role-playing game, drew heavily on Tolkienian elements in its initial design. Though the game's creators incorporated a wide range of influences, the core of their game world featured many familiar components: elves, dwarves, and halflings, renamed from hobbits for legal reasons as playable races, rangers clearly modeled on Aragorn's woodcraft, and quests that often involved traversing dangerous wilderness areas to confront evil in its lair. Digital gaming embraced these influences even more enthusiastically. From text adventures to modern MMORPGs like World of Warcraft, countless games have drawn inspiration from Middle-earth's races, settings, and narrative structures. The quest narrative, a small band of diverse characters undertaking a journey through varied environments to achieve a specific goal, became the backbone of countless RPGs, while the concept of a game world with its own deep history that players gradually uncover draws directly from the way Tolkien revealed Middle-earth's past through allusions, appendices, and glimpses of ancient ruins. One of the most distinctive aspects of Tolkien's legacy has been his influence on language creation. His own languages, particularly Quenya and Sindarin, were developed with a philologist's attention to internal consistency, historical development, and the relationship between language and culture. This approach established a new standard for constructed languages in fiction and inspired the modern conlang, constructed language movement, a community of enthusiasts who create languages for artistic, intellectual, or experimental purposes. In film and television, works like Avatar, Game of Thrones, and Star Trek have employed professional linguists to create fully functional languages for their non-human characters, a practice that would have been unimaginable in popular entertainment before Tolkien demonstrated its artistic value. Perhaps most significantly, his approach to language creation demonstrated that languages are not merely tools for communication, but expressions of culture, carriers of history, and shapers of thought. A final aspect of Tolkien's cultural legacy that has gained increasing prominence in recent decades is his influence on environmental consciousness and activism. Though Tolkien never explicitly identified as an environmentalist, the modern movement barely existed during his lifetime, his works contain powerful depictions of the beauty of unspoiled nature and the tragedy of its destruction that have resonated strongly with contemporary ecological concerns. The contrast between the Shire's bucolic landscape and the industrial wasteland of Mordor, or Saruman's Isengard, presents a clear moral judgment about different ways of relating to the natural world. Particularly powerful is his portrayal of trees not as passive resources for human use, but as beings with their own dignity and agency. Environmental activists have drawn direct inspiration from these elements, with organizations sometimes adopting names like the Ents and using Tolkien's language in their advocacy for forest preservation. Beyond these specific areas of influence, The Lord of the Rings has achieved something rare for any work of art. It has become a common cultural touchstone across diverse generations and societies. Its characters, scenes, and quotes have entered the shared vocabulary of global culture, referenced everywhere from political speeches to internet memes. For many people worldwide, Middle-earth serves as a kind of secondary homeland, a place they have never physically visited, but which feels as real and significant as many places in the primary world. What explains this extraordinary cultural penetration? Perhaps it is the combination of immersive detail with mythic simplicity, of complex world-building with straightforward moral clarity, of scholarly depth with narrative accessibility, or perhaps it is something more fundamental. Tolkien's ability to connect readers with archetypal patterns of journey, struggle, friendship, and sacrifice that speak to our deepest human experiences. In creating a world both utterly different from our own and yet somehow familiar at its emotional core, he gave us a mirror in which to see our own condition more clearly. Our journey through the history, themes, and legacy of the Lord of the Rings now draws to a close. Like Frodo and his companions returning to the Shire after their great adventure, we return to the present moment carrying the memory of where we've been, the majestic vistas and intimate moments, the perils and triumphs, the wisdom and wonder we've encountered along the way. As you lie there, perhaps drifting toward sleep or simply resting in the story's afterglow, consider what you might carry forward from this tale into your waking hours. Perhaps it's the courage of hobbits who show us that even the smallest person can change the course of the future. Perhaps it's the wisdom of Gandalf, who knew when to act and when to step back, allowing others to find their own strength. Perhaps it's the steadfast loyalty of Sam, whose simple love proves stronger than all the powers of darkness. Tolkien's world reminds us that beauty persists even in the midst of shadow, that hope can be found in the darkest of times, and that the most ordinary among us may harbor extraordinary courage. It shows us the importance of fellowship, of reaching across differences to find common cause, and the power of mercy, which can transform even the most corrupted soul into an unwitting instrument of good. The road, as Bilbo once said, goes ever on and on, stretching from our doorstep into realms both wondrous and mundane. Each day offers a new opportunity for adventure, for friendship, for choices that shape not only our own story, but the greater tale in which we all participate. Though we may not face dark lords or wield magical rings, we all confront moments that test our courage, our wisdom, and our compassion. If you take nothing else from our time in Middle-earth, remember this: that great evil is overcome not primarily through strength of arms, but through the countless small acts of goodness performed by ordinary people. That beauty matters, whether in nature, art, or simple human kindness. And that no matter how dark the present moment may seem, there is always the promise of dawn, of renewal, of the chance to begin again. As Gandalf told Frodo in a moment of doubt, all we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. May you decide wisely with courage and hope in all the days to come. And now, as the music fades and my voice grows softer, allow yourself to rest in whatever follows, whether dreams of Middle-earth, a peaceful night's sleep, or simply the quiet comfort of having shared in a tale well told. The story is yours now, to carry with you in your own way. Namaria, dear listener, farewell, until our paths cross again.